ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। So, welcome to the sixth part of the introduction to the Sankhya philosophy, which we have been doing. So, we've covered a lot of ground. We've discussed first the very important Satkaryavada, that is the theory of causation according to Sankhya, which says that the effect pre-exists in the cause before its manifestation. It is very important because the whole theory of evolution of the Sankhya depends upon this theory of causation. Then we discussed in detail Prakriti and its functions, the gunas, and then the nature of the Purusha also. And last time we just had a glimpse into the theory of evolution of the Sankhya. So we saw that the Sankhya clearly enunciates the doctrine of evolution, and it says that this manifold world of diverse things is not created by God out of nothing, not out of zero. It is just an evolution from Prakriti. Prakriti evolves, then again becomes unmanifest. That's all. So if we say that, then what is the cause of Prakriti? From where did Prakriti come? Sankhya says that Prakriti is eternally existent. It is the ultimate reality along with Purusha. There are two ultimate realities. So the whole of the nature evolves from Prakriti, which is the first cause. It is a matrix of the whole world of effects, physical as well as mental. So production is just transformation or evolution. It is not something coming suddenly out of zero. It is not that. So this we saw, and we also saw what evolves first from the Prakriti. So I will just share the chart again so that we can all refresh our memory. So here we are see the Purusha and the Prakriti. Now Purusha is not actively involved in the creation, just the presence of Purusha is enough to start this process of evolution. So we have seen last time that the first product from Prakriti is the Mahat, which you can see here, Mahat or cosmic intelligence. After the cosmic intelligence comes the Ahankara, which is the ego. It is the sense of I am, I exist, I am separate from other things. Now, from the three aspects, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas of this Ahankara, from the Sattva aspect, we saw that the five Jnanendriyas, that is the organs of knowledge, and the five Karmendriyas, which are the organs of action, and the mind. See, these three evolve all from the Sattva aspect of the Ahankara. From Rajas, nothing directly evolves, but Rajas is the basis because Rajas is activity. So without activity, Sattva and Tamas cannot function. So Rajas simply lends its energy, so to say, to Sattva and Tamas, and from Tamas we get the five tanmatras or the subtle essences of sound, touch, form, taste and odor, and also later their gross manifestation. So this in short is how Prakriti evolves into this universe of infinite variety of infinite forms. So this we saw in a little detail last time. Now today we will just discuss the function of Prakriti in relation to the Purusha, and we will again discuss how Purusha is freed from Prakriti with the help of Prakriti itself. But before that, I just want to put some points before you, that is the important points which we should remember in the discussion we had last time. So I will just share some diagrams with you which I made. See, this one point we should remember. What is the Antakarana? Antakarana, this term will come again and again in Vedanta. So Antakarana means that it is made up of two words. Anta. Anta means internal. And Karana means the instruments or the organs. So Antakarana means internal organs. According to Sankhya, it consists of Buddhi. Buddhi we have seen, Buddhi or the intellect. It ascertains and makes decisions. The natural function of Buddhi is to manifest itself and all other things which we come in contact with directly or indirectly. So we cognize everything with the help of the Buddhi. It is the ground of all intellectual processes. Without Buddhi, we are as good as dead. We will not be able to function at all. Next is the Ahankara or ego, which is responsible for the feeling of I and mine. I am separate, that person is separate, all these things are separate. This feeling comes from Ahankara. And the third is mind. Mind interprets the indeterminate data supplied by the external organs into determinate perceptions. For example, when we see something, first there is an indeterminate perception that there is something there. Then the mind interprets it. Suppose we see this sofa, then the mind says, oh, it is just like the thing which we had saw earlier, which we had called sofa. It has the same characteristics, so it must be a sofa. So it is so quick that these processes are not very obvious to us, but it happens nevertheless. And the internal organs also consist of these 11 indriyas. So Manas, 5 organs of knowledge and 5 organs of action. Manas we have already seen. So 5 organs of knowledge and 5 organs of this internal organ, Antakarana consists of this Buddhi, Ahankara and Manas, these 3. And we should always also know that what are the Indriyas according to Sankhya. So there are 11 Indriyas. Those Indriyas are 1 Manas, then 5 organs of knowledge and the 5 organs of actions. So this is very important point. But we should remember that this is according to Sankhya. Antakarana, according to Sankhya, is made up of Buddhi, Ahankar and Manas. When we come to Vedanta, Vedanta will also add Chitta, mind stuff to this. So we should be very clear, we should not confuse. So according to Sankhya, the Antakarana is made up of Buddhi, Ahankar and Manas. And according to Sankhya, we have 11 Indriyas. Those 11 are first Manas, then 5 organs of knowledge, that is ear, nose, taste, etc. And the 5 organs of action, which are the hand, feet, etc. So this This is very important. We can just remember this. Second thing to remember is subtle body or the linga sharira. The subtle body, when we die, we leave this gross body behind, which is either buried or burnt or whatever. But we exit this body with the subtle body. What is the subtle body? It is also called the Sukshma Sharira or the Linga Sharira. So this, according to Sankhya, is made up of intellect or buddhi, ego or ahankara, and the 5 organs of knowledge and the 5 subtle essences or the tanmatras. So subtle body is so subtle that it is imperceptible. So that is why it is made up of all these subtle entities only. The buddhi, the ahankara, I am leaving, I leave the body, I am out of the body. All these we experience because the ahankara is a part of the subtle body. When we die, then we will feel that yes, I am leaving this body. So that I is due to the ahankara. So ahankara plus buddhi plus the 5 organs of knowledge. These organs are very subtle, and as we discussed last time, the outer ear and all are only the instruments, but the organs are very subtle. They can't be perceived. So these are also part of the subtle body. And the 5 subtle essences of the tanmatras. So these make up our Sukshma Sharira or Linga Sharira, which leaves the gross body when we die. And this Sukshma Sharira will again take up another body if we are to be reborn. And if we are freed, of course, then we don't have to assume any other body. So these concepts are very important. And another thing, you will, those who have read a little will know that often the 24 tattvas or principles of Sankhya are discussed, and even in the Gospel of Ramakrishna we see that it is said that there are 24 principles or tattvas of Sankhya. What are these? Here you can see one by one. First is the Prakriti, from which everything comes. Prakriti evolves into Mahat, Mahat into Ahankara. Then Ahankara, we know that from the Sattvic Ahankara comes all the sense organs, mind, the organs of knowledge and the organs of action. So all these come from the subtle aspect of the Ahankaras, and from the tamasic aspect come the 5 tanmatras or the subtle essences of sound, taste, color and smell, as well as the 5 gross elements of ether, air, fire, water and earth. And Purusha, which is another ultimate reality, is the 25th principle. But beside the Purusha, we generally talk of the 24 principles. So here you can see Prakriti 1, Mahat 2, Ahankara 3. So 11 plus 3, 14. 14 plus 5, 19. 19 plus 5, 24. So these are the 24 principles. In the diagram it is very clear. We see one by one. From Prakriti to Mahat. Mahat, Sattvika aspect, gives rise to these organs of actions, organs of knowledge and manas. And the Tamasika aspect here gives rise to the subtle essences of all these elements and the gross forms also. So if you just remember that way, that the psychical part is from the Sattva aspect of the Ahankara. Sattvika aspect gives rise to all the psychical part, all the mental things. So here we see the mind and the organs of action and the organs of knowledge. And all this world around us, that comes from the Tamasika aspect. If you remember in that way, it will be quite easy to remember. So these 3 things are important, that Antakarana, what it is made up of, then the subtle body, which we will discuss in detail when we study the Vedanta, and the third is the 24 principles of Sankhya. So now, today, let us see how Prakriti serves the Purusha, and the Purusha, how though actually free, first becomes involved in Prakriti and then again attains freedom. Yeah. So the whole course of evolution from the gross elements and the subtle elements is distinguished in two stages, that is the psychical and the physical. The psychical comes from the sattva aspect of the ahankara, and the physical aspect comes from the tamasika aspect. This we can just remember so that it will be very easy to understand. So now this is the process of evolution, but we should never forget the purpose, the whole purpose of this evolution, because that is also the purpose of our lives. That is the only purpose. So what is that? Swami Vivekananda says that the manifestation of Prakriti or nature is for the soul, for the Purusha. All these combinations are for some third person, third entity, which is sentient, which is Chetana. So the combinations which we call nature, these constant changes are going on for the experience of the soul only, for its liberation only. This we should always remember. So I will just share just a little of the original karikas of the Sankhya. When we mention one point, I will just show you the relevant karika. Those who know a little Sanskrit should not be deprived of this joy. So here you see what we said just now, that the whole of the nature is for the Purusha. So this is the original karika from the Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi. See what it says. Purushasya darshanartham. Only for the experience of the Purusha. Kaivalyartham cha pradhanasya. Kaivalya means freedom. So it is for the experience of the Purusha and for its emancipation that Prakriti exists. Okay. And what is the cooperation like? The next line we see, Pangu andhavat ubhayorapi sanyogah tatkrita sarga. Pangu means a lame person. Andha means a blind person. So if the blind person and the lame person are caught in a forest, they are lost in a forest, so what will happen? The lame person can't walk and the blind person can't see. So the blind person here represents Prakriti. Prakriti can't see means it is insentient. And the lame person is Purusha because it cannot act. But both of them combine together. Sanyoga means combination. Both of them combine together and the result is what? The result is only one, that the Purusha is liberated. So here you can see the English translation also. For the exhibition of the nature to the spirit and for the emancipation of the spirit, like the union between the lame and the blind, from this conjunction proceeds creation. Creation means evolution. So this is from the original Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi. And though the Purusha unites with Prakriti first for enjoyment, but again, when it finds that all enjoyments are fleeting and actually cause only pain, finally, when discrimination arises, then it unites with Prakriti for its liberation. Then it does not see Prakriti as a means of enjoyment, it only uses it to free itself. That is the thing. So Prakriti, so to say, offers its experiences to the Purusha only till such time till the discriminative knowledge is not brought about. When the knowledge arises in Purusha, then Prakriti has no more use for it. So when the knowledge arises, the Prakriti ceases from ministering to the Purusha, who, having got all experiences, has now become endowed with discriminative knowledge, direct realization, or Tattva Jnana. So that is why it is said the operations of Prakriti last only till such time as the attainment of discriminative wisdom by the Purusha. That is the thing. So this is what evolution of the universe is like. But this evolution is not the dance of blind atoms. It is not just chance. This we should remember. It is not the dance of blind atoms nor the push and pull of the mechanical forces which produces a world which has no purpose. On the other hand, this whole world serves the most fundamental ends of spiritual life. But the problem is we forget this spiritual aim. We forget that the world is only for our liberation. It is not something which we should be entangled into. That is the problem. So just like the spider, it is said, comparison is given, the spider weaves its web. It is coming from its own body. But sometimes it gets entangled into its own web. So the state of the Purusha is something like that. It is because of the Purusha, presence of the Purusha, that evolution takes place. But the poor Purusha, he gets entangled into the nature which, so to say, is actually emanating from him. From Prakriti, of course, but due to the presence of the Purusha. So that is the sad state of affairs. Yeah. And we have to rectify it. So actually the history of the whole world, in spite of all appearances to the contrary, is actually the progressive realization of the life of the spirit. The Purusha is actually gradually realizing its true nature. So the evolution of Prakriti into a world of all these objects makes it possible for the Purusha to enjoy or suffer according to its karma. But the ultimate end of evolution is the emancipation of Purusha. And it is only through a life of moral training in the evolved universe that the self realizes its true nature. So, this Prakriti helps the moral training of the Purusha so that the Purusha can purify the mind and get rid of all these attachments which are binding it to Prakriti. That is the thing. So this is in short the doctrine of liberation. So from the beginning we see, from when we just when we have start getting a little maturity also, even a teenager, so to say, will realize that our life on earth is a mixture of joys and sorrows. There may be many pleasures in life, but many more are the pains and suffering. This we realize when we gain some maturity. And all living beings, without any exception at all living beings have to have their share of this suffering. Even if by God's grace we can avoid most sufferings throughout our life, but there is ultimately decay and death nobody can avoid. The body will fall to pieces one day, and of course the final aim is death. So ordinarily, of course, generally from our birth itself, from our very starting of our life, all of us are subject to three kinds of pain. So these are in Sanskrit called the Adhyatmika, Adhibhautika and Adhidaivika. So Adhyatmika pain is all this mental and bodily pain. Mental suffering, depression, insecurity, fear, and the bodily suffering which we all know, fever, headache, tooth pain, stomach pain, this pain, that pain. So all these come under Adhyatmika Dukkha or the Adhyatmika misery. The second is Adi Bhautika, that is produced by other things like other men, other beasts, some thorn. If it has pricked our foot, we get hurt by something. All that is called the Adi Bhautika misery. And the third kind of suffering, Adi Daivika, Deva means something which is beyond the world, so to say, something supernatural. So from that comes Daivika. So Adi Daivika is those miseries caused by supernatural causes like ghosts, demons, etc. So these three kinds of pain no living being in the world can avoid. But at the same time, all of us desire to avoid every kind of pain. All of us desire that our sufferings should end for all time to come. But the problem is that we desire an end to suffering while living in the world, while enjoying everything of the world. That is the main problem. That can never be. That has never been possible. It can never be possible. Because good and evil, pain and suffering actually are the two sides of the coin. We cannot have pleasure only and exclude pain altogether. So long as we are in this body, with all these organs, etc., still we identify ourselves with body, we cannot avoid pain. So when the Purusha realizes this, that it is the identification with the Prakriti, with the body and mind, that is causing all his pain, then he starts discriminating. Because he wants absolute and complete cessation of all pain without even a possibility of return, of the pain returning. And this is called apavarga or mukti, and that is the aim of human life. So how are we to attain liberation or absolute freedom? All the things in the world just give us a temporary relief. They don't give us permanent freedom from the pain and suffering of the world. So the Sankhya says, those who follow Sankhya, those philosophers, they want some other and more effective means of accomplishing this task. And what is that? That is only the right knowledge of reality, which is Tattva Jnana. That is the thing. So Sankhya and Vedanta both say that our sufferings are just due to one cause, that is ignorance. Ignorance of our real nature. We have mixed up ourselves with other things, with the Prakriti. Even in the ordinary walks of life, we see that the more ignorant a person is, the more he suffers. The more knowledgeable we are about ourselves and the world and about the nature of the world, nature of the people who surround us, the more knowledge we gain, the smoother our life will be. So this knowledge actually culminates in the ultimate knowledge. So till this knowledge is actually gained, we cannot be perfectly happy or completely free from pain and misery. Only when we have this knowledge, we attain freedom. Because reality, according to Sankhya, is made up of the self and the world of objects presented to all these selves which are existing. Because in Sankhya, there are innumerable selves. Now the self or Purusha is an intelligent principle which actually does not possess any quality of or activity. It is just pure consciousness and free from the limitations of space, time and causality. It is the pure subject, always the knower, which transcends the whole world of objects. It transcends Prakriti completely. It transcends the physical things, also the psychical things like the mind, intellect, etc. All the changes and activities which we see, all thoughts and feelings, all pleasure and pain, all joys and sorrows belong to this mind and body complex which is a part of Prakriti. And the self is quite different from this complex of mind and body, and therefore actually it is beyond all kinds of afflictions. Pleasure and pain are mental facts actually which do not affect the true self at all. It is the mind and not the self which feels pleasure or pain or which is happy and unhappy. The self is different from the ego or the agent who strives for good and bad results. The karta. But the Purusha is akarta. Akarta means non-doer. It's a transcendent subject whose very essence is pure consciousness, freedom, eternity and immortality. So beautifully it is said in Vedanta, Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta. We should always remember these beautiful terms. Nitya, it is eternal. Shuddha, it is always pure. Buddha, it is always awakened. Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta. And it is always liberated. It is actually never bound. So the self is like that. It is the subject or witness of mental changes as of bodily and physical changes. Actually, it is freedom itself because it is above space, time and the cause and effect cycle of the universe. And it is eternal because it is uncaused. Only that which is caused by something can be destroyed because destruction is only going back to the cause. But that which has no cause can never be destroyed. So that is a very important point. So pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow really belong to the buddhi or the intellect or the mind, and the self by its very nature is free from all these things. But on account of ignorance, it fails to distinguish itself from Prakriti. Okay. So when it identifies itself with the ego, then what happens? It becomes somebody with a certain name. I am this and that person. I am so and so. I was born on this date. I may die on this date. I may live this long. I have done this. I have done that. All these come from the ego, which is a part of Prakriti. So the self considers itself to be happy or unhappy when the mind and the intellect with which it identifies itself becomes so. So it is the example is given that when suppose there is a father and son, so generally we see that these attachments are so strong that the father identifies himself with his offsprings, the mother identifies herself with the children. So if the child is sad, the parents become sad. If the child is happy, the parents become happy. Actually, the parents are completely different from the children, but this attachment, the feeling of I and mine, this is mine, I am this body, my child has come from this body, so it is mine. Bas. As soon as this mine comes, our identification starts and suffering starts. So just like that, when suppose parents suffer, when the children suffer, although they are completely different from the children, but the ties binding them are due to this attachment. Similarly, when we get attached to Prakriti, we are bound. We are bound to our mind. When the mind becomes sad, we become sad. When the mind becomes happy, we also become happy. So it is all a want of discrimination, that is called in Sanskrit aviveka. Viveka means discrimination. When a is added, the meaning becomes opposite. So it becomes aviveka or non-discrimination. So what happens? There are two things, the seer and the seen. Drashta is the seer and the seen is Prakriti. So we can actually, it is not possible for the seer to confuse itself with the seen. I am seeing this object. Now how can I think that I am this object? It is not possible. But this impossible thing has become possible due to Maya. Aghatana ghatana patiyasi. In Sanskrit it is so put so beautifully. Aghatana. It can never happen. It is not possible. I am completely separate from this. How can I think myself to be this? It is impossible. Aghatana. But aghatana ghatana patiyasi. Patiyasi means expert. So one who makes the impossible possible. That is the Divine Mother or ignorance or whatever you call it. So this is the whole problem. Although actually the self is never bound at all. So this fact has been stated beautifully in the Sankhya Karika, one of the Karikas, Karika number 62, which I will just share with you. So here you can see this Karika. Tasmat, therefore, na badhyate. It is never bound. Asau means this Purusha is actually never bound, and na muchyate, it is never freed. Something which is not bound, how can it be freed? It is always free. Na api sansarati kaschit. It never comes and goes. It is never a part of sansara. So, what comes and goes? Sansarati badhyate muchyate cha. What comes and goes? What is freed and what is bound? It is nanashraya prakriti. So, the English translation you can see, thus verily the Purusha is never bound, nor is he released, nor does he migrate. It is the Prakriti being the support of this manifold creation that migrates, sansarati, is bound, badhyate, or it is released, muchyate. All this, another verse like this is in the Mandukya Karika. So all those who have read it may know. When we read it someday, we can see that. So this is the ultimate truth. So this very fact has been expressed by the great Swami Vivekananda as only he can do. So I will just share that wonderful quotation of Swamiji. His language is absolutely unbelievable. So Swamiji describes in these words how Purusha is always free, how we are always free actually. So here you can see Swamiji's quotation. See what he says. The perfect beings, those who have gained perfection, realize the universe as God Himself. So when this realization comes, then alone the veil falls from the eyes, and the man, purified and cleansed, finds his whole vision changed. The bad dreams that have been torturing him for millions of years all vanish, and he who was thinking of himself either as a man or a god or demon, he who was thinking of himself as living in low places, in high places, on earth, in heaven and so on, finds that he is really omnipresent, that all time is in him, that he is not in time. The real nature of man now stands unfolded to him as being higher than heaven, more perfect than this universe of ours, more infinite than infinite time, more omnipresent than the omnipresent ether. Thus alone man becomes fearless and becomes free. Then all delusions cease, all miseries vanish, all fears come to an end forever. Birth goes away and with it death. Pains fly and with them fly away pleasures. Earths vanish and with them vanish heavens. Bodies vanish and with them vanishes the mind also. For that man disappears the whole universe as it were. This searching, moving, continuous struggle of forces stops forever. And that which was manifesting itself as force and matter, as struggles of nature, as nature itself, as heavens and earths and plants and animals and men and angels, all that becomes transfigured into one infinite, unbreakable, unchangeable existence. And the knowing man finds that he is one with that existence. So even as clouds of various colors come before the sky, remain there for a second and then vanish away, even so before this soul are all these visions coming of earths and heavens, of the moon and the gods, of pleasures and pains, but they all pass away, leaving the one infinite blue unchangeable sky. The sky never changes. It is the clouds which change. What is the sky? The sky is the Purusha. And what is all these clouds which come and go? They are all parts of Prakriti. That is the thing. So the spirit or the soul is never bound, nor does it migrate, nor is it emancipated. It is Prakriti alone that is bound, which migrates and which is released. Bondage, migration and release are merely ascribed to Purusha. How? A beautiful example is given. Suppose two kings are fighting against each other. Okay, actually they are not fighting. They are sitting on their thrones. They are just guiding their armies. Actually the armies are fighting and the armies lose or win the war. But what happens? Actually the armies may be far away from the king. The kingdom is here. The army may be thousands of miles away fighting. But if the army loses, then the king thinks that he is lost. He is lost. Why? Because he is identifying himself with his kingdom and therefore with his army. So although the king may not be directly involved in the battle, actually the soldiers are either defeated or victorious, but the king suffers the effect of their win or loss. That is the thing. Because of identification. A normal person, a normal citizen does not suffer in that way because he is not identifying itself with the army or the kingdom. For him maybe it doesn't matter at all who will become king. His daily life will maybe undergo no change at all. So those who are detached don't suffer or enjoy with the win or loss of the army. But the more you are attached, the more you think that my happiness or misery depends on something else, then all the changes in that something else will also naturally affect you. It is as simple as that. So the cause of suffering is actually ignorance or ajnana. We have to eradicate this suffering and gain knowledge. Okay, this much is clear. But this knowledge is not an intellectual understanding only. So after this we can say, oh, we have gained knowledge. We know what Purusha is. It is completely free. I am that Purusha. So I am now free. No problem for me. But as soon as one tooth starts paining, all the problems will come. Then we will forget that we are the Purusha. We will again begin to think ourselves as the body. So only intellectual understanding will not do. Now we directly realize that we are this body. We directly realize I am so and so. If somebody calls, oh hello Tom, so the person whose name is Tom will immediately react. It is a direct realization. I am eating, I am doing, I am acting, I am suffering, I am having pleasure, I am having pain. So this direct realization which we are having now is ignorance. This has to be replaced by the direct realization that I am the Purusha. Without this realization, pain and suffering will not go. Just by reading books and philosophy, this will never go. Philosophy only tells us the way. It describes our situation and gives the practical guidance. When we study the yoga philosophy delineates all the steps of sadhana which we have to undergo. So this is just a diagram for us, for our journey. But till we actually walk along the path, until we attain the direct realization, we are as good as Prakriti. We are as good as Jada or the insentient. No use simply shouting that I am the Purusha, I am Brahman, etc. Absolutely, it makes no sense at all. So this direct knowledge of truth is necessary to remove the illusion of the body or mind as my self. As now I have a direct perception that I am a particular psychophysical organism. So this false perception has to be removed by a direct realization. And for this we require a long course of spiritual training with great dedication and devotion, constant contemplation, meditation on the truth, so that we finally realize this. And all these are described beautifully in the yoga philosophy. So actually when the self attains liberation, no change actually takes place in it. There is nothing new which is added. So liberation of the self does not mean from a less perfect to a more perfect condition. There is no change in the self. Same way, immortality and eternal life are not to be regarded as future events in time, because anything which is in time is born and it again is destroyed. Anything which is in time cannot be permanent, it cannot be eternal. So this liberation, etc., is not that at some point in time we become liberated. It's not that. We just realize that we were never bound, because all temporal acquisitions would be governed by the laws of time, space and causality. And the self is beyond all law. So attainment of liberation is just the clear recognition that the self is always essentially free, eternal and immortal. Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Swabhava. And when there is such realization, the self ceases to be affected by the sufferings of the body and mind. In Sankhya, the beautiful example is given, just as a dancing girl ceases to dance, having entertained the spectators, so Prakriti ceases to act and evolve after the Purusha has attained knowledge. And this is possible for everybody to realize this, because we are all the Purusha, all of us are Purushas. So if we realize it while living in this body, we shall become Jivan Muktas, realize souls while living. If we realize it after the body goes away, then we'll be Videha Muktas, which is without the body. But all philosophies agree that only knowledge can bring about complete destruction of the threefold misery. That is the main thing. So this is common with Vedanta also. The only small difference we have seen, that the Sankhyas don't say that we will attain pleasure or bliss when we attain liberation, because they say that pleasure and pain are the two sides of the same coin. Vedanta agrees. Vedanta says yes, pleasure and pain are two sides of the same coin, but we are not talking about the pleasure which is in the world. Vedanta says that we are here talking about a bliss which is transcendent, which transcends the world. That bliss is not a part of Prakriti at all. Pleasure and pain are same when they are a part of Prakriti, when they are related to the objects of this universe. But the bliss which transcends these, which is a property of the Atman, is not one with pain. That bliss is not worldly pleasure, it is something which transcends everything. So Vedanta says, since it is a part of the Atman, when we become free, not only will our suffering cease forever, but we will gain immortal bliss also. That bliss, since it is one with the eternal Atman, is also eternal. That is a small point of difference. Otherwise, we see that the concept of the Purusha is more or less the same as the concept of Brahman. Only Sankhya says that there are many selves, infinite number of selves, as many bodies, so many selves. But the Vedanta says that on one hand you say that the self is infinite, and on the other hand you say that the self is innumerable. So Vedanta says, how can there be innumerable infinities? That is not possible. Infinity can only be one, and that is Brahman according to Vedanta. So this concludes our very brief introduction to the Sankhya philosophy. I will not go into details of epistemology, Pratyaksha Pramana, Anumana Pramana, Shabda Pramana. Sufficient here to say that Sankhya accepts only three pramanas: direct cognition or Pratyaksha, inference or Anumana, and Shabda Pramana. That is the verbal testimony. It does not accept other three which are accepted by Vedanta. And there is also a great deal of controversy regarding whether God is actually a reality or not. So some persons say that the classical Sankhya does not admit of God. Some others say that it admits of God. So we will not go into all those controversies. We know that Sri Krishna says that I, who am God, actually give the germ of creation in the womb of Prakriti. And Sri Krishna's words are good enough for us. And of course, yoga definitely believes in Ishvara, because there is a sutra in Yoga Sutra, Ishvara pranidhanatva. By self-surrender to the Ishvara, we can also gain this knowledge. So here we see that Ishvara is actually mentioned. So there is absolutely no doubt that yoga philosophy believes in God or Ishvara. So let's stop here today, but please don't go. I have just one announcement. I have also given you an email. So we can conclude here, and I think I'll just give you a rest for one Sunday. We can discuss something light next Sunday. Then again, I will like to discuss a little portion, a little analysis of how this suffering has been analyzed so beautifully. As soon as we open this Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi, the very first sutra says how actually the aim of this philosophy is to get rid of suffering. And there is a wonderful analysis in the commentary of Vachaspati Mishra about this suffering. So I will just like to share it with you. Everything is translated, so there is no problem. Everybody can follow. But the logic and the analysis is so wonderful that I am sure you will enjoy. So that we will keep for 1 week after that is on the 27th maybe. So let's see what we can have next week, something which won't give you a headache. So let's end here today, and then I will just one small announcement is there. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanastu.